Just one moment, I'm sorry. Anyone else who would like to speak for this item, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes. Seeing none, this public hearing is closed. Moving on, I need a motion and a second for the first reading of bill number 18-19.
Motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Ms. Brenda.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, approving amending the zoning code and official map by changing the classification of approximately 2.5 acres from medium-density single-family residential R1M to local commercial C1 and owned by Mary Ann Swift and Linda Lanning, James R. O'Neill, and Joe Bob O'Neill, and located at 649 East Elm Street.
Thank you. Mr. Tyson.
Yes, the subject property here is comprised of 2.5 acres currently located in the R1M district. Elm Street at this location is classified as a secondary arterial thoroughfare in the city. Of course, US Highway 60 is classified as a primary arterial thoroughfare. With regard to the city's adopted land use plan, the land use plan, just like in the rezone case that we heard prior to this one, the land use plan designates this property as most appropriate for low-density residential development. Those developments that would be like the R1M zoning district that it is currently located in. However, just like with the last one, the city's land use plan also recommends that where you can cluster commercial types of development around primary arterials, particularly at the intersections of arterial streets, that is an appropriate place for commercial types of development. Given the depth of commercial development that you've seen trending on both sides of the highway, this would not be out of character with that. It is perhaps a little bit deeper than what you see immediately adjacent to this on that particular side of 60. If you look across the street, you see a slightly greater depth, and that depth does vary as you go up and down Highway 60 all throughout the community. The site does presently have immediate access to both water and sanitary sewer. Water service is a little bit thin there for commercial development, but assuming that the partnership that is on the agenda for later tonight is approved, the city will be performing a capital improvement in this vicinity that will increase that water pressure and have an impact that would make it more suitable for commercial types of development located here. One other point I want to make here is alternative uses as it's presently zoned, also something appropriate to consider when you're talking about rezone types of decisions. Obviously, the alternative use as it's presently zoned here is for single-family residential development. It currently contains a residence. If rezoned, that residence would be allowed to stay there and be grandfathered in until such time the development turned to commercial. If it's not rezoned, it remains R1M, and potentially you could get more of a yield residentially out of it. However, the question is, what is the highest and best use for this particular property? And again, I think what the plan recommends in general is that given the size of this tract being 2.5 acres, given its location, its proximity to other commercial types of development, given the district that they're proposing being the local commercial, which of the commercial districts is the most appropriate district to have located next to a residential area like you would have in this particular case. I think all those things taken together do lend itself toward this being an appropriate type of designation for this property. To address some of the concerns that were brought up during the hearing, I believe one of them was stormwater. This, like any other development, if you're adding more than 5,000 square feet of impervious surface, which this development surely would, you are required to detain your stormwater runoff such that your post-development stormwater flows are no greater than your pre-development stormwater flows. And so that will be engineered such that in order to mitigate those stormwater types of concerns. Another thing to point out here is that wherever this property adjoins a residential zoning district, the City of Republic's zoning regulations require a buffer yard and screen to be installed. It's not a perfect system, but it is designed to reduce noise and visual impacts that you may have given those incompatibility of uses that you often have. Some of those were mentioned during the hearing, things like noise, additional traffic. No doubt this would pull some additional traffic from US Highway 60 to this particular site on Elm Street, but like I said, Elm Street is an arterial class thoroughfare, so you're going to have a pretty substantial volume of traffic coursing through this thoroughfare in any case. The Planning and Zoning Commission did vote against this particular application. That vote was 2 noes and 4 yeses. Staff's recommendation is that this particular application is partially consistent with the comprehensive plan, generally consistent with the trend of development in close proximity, generally compatible with surrounding land uses, able to be adequately served by municipal infrastructure in the area, and all this being considered, staff recommends approval.
Thank you, sir. Questions, comments, concerns from council? Mr. Jones.
To clarify, P and Z voted 4 yes, 2 no?
No, that was, I may have misstated. I apologize. It was 2 yes and 4 no.
Okay. Maybe I heard it backwards.
Yeah, it did not.
Highly possible.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, or concerns from council? Seeing none, remember this is a first read. If you have any questions, please get with Mr. Tyson for the next meeting. Before moving on to the next item, we did not have a public hearing scheduled for this. Obviously, we have several people who would like to speak, so we are going to have a public discussion. Public discussion will be the same order that we have a public hearing in. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you should, this is not planning and zoning, so this is not a question and answer. What this is an opportunity for you to give your opinion on whether you would like for this to go forward or whether you would not like it to go forward. In that same aspect, please get your thoughts together because the opportunity to speak will be at the podium, not from the audience, so we can maintain order for the meeting. So what we will do is I'm going to run it very similar to a public hearing. I'm going to ask Mr. Tyson to give us, well, I'm going to have to open the bill first because, sorry, we've not added a discussion like this before. So we're going to open the bill, have the first read, have our overview, and then we're going to open up public discussion. So I need a motion and a second for the first reading of bill number 18-20.
Motion. Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0, Ms. Brenda.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, amending the zoning code and official map by changing the classification of approximately 66 acres located near South Lynn Avenue, South Farm Road 89, south of Miller Road, from medium-density single-family residential R1M to Planned Development District PDD, and the approval of the development plan for Valley Trails PD 18-01.
Thank you, Mr. Tyson. If you give us a brief overview.
Yes. This particular rezone is to a planned development district, which is unlike one of our conventional zoning districts, and it may be helpful to draw the distinction that way. Presently, this 66 acres, which is located immediately south of the existing Diamond View Estates and Valley Park Estates neighborhoods, that 66 acres is presently located within the medium-density single-family zoning district, which means it's already zoned for residential development at a particular density, which would be considered by our land use plan as a low density. Within that current zoning district, as long as the lots are at least 9,000 square feet, the 66 acres is in essence a blank canvas with very few restrictions. As long as you meet the basic minimums of that particular district, 9,000 square feet lots, lots that are at least 80 feet wide, at least 100 feet deep, you can lay it out in pretty much any way and then develop houses with very few additional restrictions upon that. What is being proposed tonight is a planned development district, which is a rezone, not to a district with just a short list of parameters, but rather a rezone to a rather specific development plan, and that development plan is displayed in your packets and also displayed on this board right here. That development plan does permit the development of single-family residences and single-family residences only at a maximum density of 2.7 units per acre, which is not dissimilar from the R1M district that it's currently in. The yield that you get from a typical R1M zoning district here in the City of Republic is probably somewhere in the range of 2.4 to 2.5, a lot of those lots being 10 to 12,000 square feet on average in size. The minimum front and rear yard setbacks in this development plan are 15 feet. The minimum side yard setbacks are set at 5 feet, minimum lot widths of 50 feet. So you would be allowed to have a variation of densities within this particular, all of it single family, but you could have variation of lot sizes without being limited to that 9,000 square feet minimum that you have in the R1M district that it's in now. This development plan also includes the development of landscaped common areas throughout the development, pedestrian facilities on both sides of all streets, privately owned and maintained local streets and related stormwater infrastructure, as well as the development of a collector class thoroughfare that extends to Southland Avenue, which is required, as we discussed earlier, by the city's adopted major thoroughfare plan. The regulation of this development in any way that's not specifically defined by the development plan will be regulated by the city's normal developments for a subdivision. This development plan does not specify certain right-of-way widths or anything like that, so it will just go straight to what would normally be the case, which would be 50-foot wide right-of-way widths and at minimum 28-foot curb-to-curb streets. The plan does include some dead-end streets, as we discussed earlier. The city and the developer will be partnering to have turnarounds installed at those dead ends. I do want to make one quick point here. Although the illustrations you have show a cul-de-sac at one particular dead end, that cul-de-sac is not actually going to be in the final plan that will be presented to you at the time of final passage of the second reading. So although it's displayed that way here, I do want to make sure that that's clear, that the ultimate plan that will be presented to you for adoption will not include that particular cul-de-sac. We will handle that dead end as we're handling the others throughout the development to facilitate a suitable turnaround to get traffic up and down those particular streets. Staff recommendation here is that it is generally consistent with the comprehensive plan. It is generally consistent with the development trends in the area, generally compatible with the surrounding land uses in close proximity, is also able to be adequately served by municipal infrastructure, and all these things being considered, staff is recommending approval. The Planning and Zoning Commission heard this and conducted a public hearing last week. Their vote was a tie, 3-3. There were 7 commissioners, but 1 was absent, so we ended up with a 3-3 tie. According to the adopted rules of the commission, anytime you're not able to obtain a majority of those present with affirmative votes, it is construed as a denial. So therefore, even though it was a tie, it is construed by the rules to be a denial of this particular application.
Thank you, sir. A little bit different. I'll have you step away.
Sure.
We'll have some public discussion, and then I'll have you come back for questions, comments from council. I'd like for them to hear. Anyone wishing to speak against this item, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes. Anyone wishing to speak against this item?
My name is Justin Hess. I'm at 956 East Gray Street, at the end of basically where it butts up here. I have one of the homes down there right off Gray Street. Being a small business owner, I always encourage and invite new residential homes being built. I'm a service-based industry, and I rely on that. Of course, seeing our community and our town grow. As a bordering home, though, the new development, I have plenty of concerns about. Like to discuss, a lot of things about, if we're a neighboring home to that. Some of the yards in Valley Park are pretty laid out nice. I mean, they got big backyards. On the backside of Gray Street, there's about 3 of us that back up to that field, and our yards are very limited already. So having the new setback, I'll be an arm's throw away from my neighbors. And with them turning vertically right there, I'd have more of them. Of course, that kind of concerns me if I do decide to build and want to sell my home. It could hurt, property values, which would be another big concern I have. Like myself and other neighbors, when we bought into Valley Park, there was a brochure. Hey, public amenities. We're going to have greenways. It's going to be family oriented. That was not the case. It's supposed to be gay community. I believe just a couple of years ago we finally took the pillars down in our neighborhood because it never happened. None of the amenities happened, and I believe that was a Matt Henry project, which I believe is a part here. The Hancocks, which are adjacent to me, were able to buy a lot to extend their yard. With many trials and errors, I have not been able to reach the same conclusion they did to grow my yard. So the setbacks kind of got thrown at me. And like I said, I like for my kids to be able to enjoy the art. Of course, having a field there is one thing, but having another house right on my property line is really concerning. And then again, you know, developers do run out of funds. It happens. I believe Valley Park states for that itself. We have beautiful homes in there, but what was going to be in that backgated community did not come to fruition like it was planned. Being that that's the same developer, I could only assume it would be the same thing that happened to this one. You know, there's been a lot of discussion, Farrow through, with Gray Street. I invite all of you guys to drive down Gray Street. I mean, we have a beautiful median that when you pull in, line of sight's not the best, which I'm sure you'll hear pulling out of that neighborhood. But man, it's a beautiful dog leg. You know, growing up in Republic, I always saw Stony Creek. It's like, man, it'd be nice to work hard and get one of those homes. And moving into Valley Park, I really thought I got that. I thought I achieved that. Having a, you know, perhaps a second-story house shadowing over my house that might not be comparable. You know, let's say, oh, the funds didn't happen. Oh, we're gonna have to vinyl side this one. You know, that really could hurt us. And being the entryway to Valley Trail just really destroys that dream of, hey, I'm in a Stony Creek kind of neighborhood. I'm just an entryway. And you know, the water is a big concern. You know, we have a waterway back there, a fountain. It fills up, but it dries out. And when they were building those homes back there, the basements were flooding already before they were even being completed. And you know, engineers and a lot of developers and designers design things so the water can be treated. But you know, that doesn't always happen as well. So that'd be a big of my concerns. A lot of things following through. Changing the zoning on this, I feel like would change the comparable of what's already beside there, and especially having the homes that close together, neighboring, you know, was supposed to be its own subdivision, and having that entryway to it, I feel like it was really going to hurt our neighborhood and really cause issues down the road. So, those are my concerns on why I'm opposed to these set plans here, and would like to see something revised. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else who would like to speak against this item, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Hi, I'm Jim Hyde. I live at 965 Grace, across the street from Justin, and I have a lot of the same concerns. The main concern I have is traffic. You're creating a graded community with actually only two exits for the people, especially in the southernmost and west subdivision there. They're going to dump out on Gray Street, which is where I live at. And again, your sight lines on the intersection of Lynn and Grace are very, very limited. You have a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit on Lynn, which your own studies indicate that the average speed is 45 miles an hour, so we think it's a dangerous intersection to start out. In addition to that, when you put a gated community on the south side, those people are going to have an exit to Lynn to the east. But the people that are going to be coming across from like the other subdivisions on West Grace, I think there's White Oak subdivision back in there. I can foresee a lot of kids cutting through there a back way to go to high school. I can see traffic lined up on Lynn past my house. And then what that does, that opens up Henry and Jared, which are definitely not collector streets, to people kind of back channeling to get out onto to Lynn Street. So I think my concerns not only address Grace, but these other streets in the subdivision. My last concern about Grace Street, I can envision this being widened to something like Miller is right now. I did not buy into a subdivision to have a street to carry that much traffic. And you are dumping approximately 140 homes onto this street in which I live on. with no other exits. Now, you do have an exit that's available to the north, which is Conroy. You have about 3 other streets on the west side besides Gray's that are going to be cut off. I understand there's going to be some sort of a turnaround. I don't know what that really means. But if you live in a gated community, that's good and bad. The good part is you're secluded. The bad part is you're secluded. If you have an emergency, it's my understanding that emergency responders indicate that you live there at your own risk. If there is a delay in getting to you, getting emergency services to you, that's a risk that you assume. And I hope the developer is aware of that, because residents should also be aware of that. Okay. I think the drainage issue, Justin talked about that. We have a lot of water that's flowing just from the field that's coming in there right now, which is really over what can be handled by our water retention area. So not only would I like to see, if this is developed, I would like to see it not only that they handle what is created by theirs, but they improve what is already existing, because we have more water flow than we can handle, because we have about 3 or 4 homes that are on Branch Street whose backyards are just inundated with water every time it rains. So the drainage issue is a concern of mine. I do have a problem with the lot size. The 15-foot setbacks to the front and the back are good, and I do want an upper scale subdivision to go in there. I realize there's not going to be a field forever, but if this development does not go as planned, I need some assurances that when we have a 15-foot setback on the front, 15 setback on the foot on the back, that if this development does not go as planned, I don't want it to be that the developer loses interest and then he can sell it to somebody else and then they can do whatever they want to. So I need some assurances that, you know, if this is approved, that some limit will be put on the number of these small lots that are planned and being approved at this time. Let's see. I think, so I mean, that's the concerns of my developer commitment. So I think that pretty well takes care of my objections to it. I don't object to the developer. I don't object to the upper scale houses. I do object to the gated community, the limited access to the west and to the north. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else who would like to speak against this item, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes. Please be conscious of the time.
I'm sorry I didn't sign in when I came up. I mean, when you asked me to.
We'll just ask you to do it now.
I wasn't planning on speaking, but along with this gentleman.
Sir, can we get your name and address?
Oh, Larry Kennedy, 622 East Ginger Bid Court in Diamond View Estates.
Thank you.
One of the issues that he was talking about was the lot size, and where I live, it abuts along the property. Can I approach that map, please?
Absolutely. Just have to ask you to go back to speak because the people are watching in YouTube.
Right along here. I've got 0.44 acres there, but the way they plotted that out, I'll have 3 lots abutting my backyard, and that's not very big lots. I mean, I think I heard in the last meeting some figure of maybe the smallest being 4,500 square feet. I heard 5 and 4,500.
6,000.
Okay, well, I just wanted to say that I agree with him, and if you looked at redoing that possibly and cutting down the number of lots and keeping the what was it, 10,000, 7,000 square foot, lots that might alleviate some of the traffic problems as well.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you.
Anyone else who would like to speak against this item, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes.
I'm Fred Houston, I live on Branch Lane, not too far from Jim Hyde, who's across the water. I'll fill this out when I get done. The number of issues, one, a 15-foot setback from the highway is rather short. Can you park a car in that distance? I have not measured, but that's really short, and I think it needs to be looked at. Two, the water issue is, as Jim says, really bad. I don't know who dictates the water. I don't know if they say, okay, you have to put 3 retention ponds in, and they do what they want to. But what was done behind my house was done improperly. I don't know who wants to take responsibility. I'm not looking for that, but it was done improperly, so it's now we're flooding. The water is, some of the land is just mush. When the tractors try to cut through it, it just sinks. So it was done poorly, and if you don't have a good engineer of water, who knows what he's doing, you're going to have all that water coming in the wrong direction, and it will be a real issue. The other problem I have is this lot size. The lot size are really small, and that's going to drag down our property value. Just can't help it. It's too small from my standpoint. The interesting thing about gated community is there's no maintaining the roads. So all the folks who come in there know they're going to have to maintain their own road. That's expensive. When ours was supposed to be gated, the grader came along, raised his blade, walked around the line, and put it back down until we got the gate got rid of. But that will be some issues that they'll have to face. Somebody will have to face. Because if they come in there and don't realize that, then they'll have some dues they didn't plan on. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Turn around here first.
I'm Janet Hyde, and I live at 965 East Grace. And I just wanted to mention one thing I don't think my husband had mentioned. And the street, the safety issues in the streets are one of our main concerns. And when we originally bought the piece of property on Gray Street, but at one time it evidently was called Henry Street because our taxes still even say Henry Street. And my issue is, you know, we're part of Valley Park, and which we understood that subdivision was done. It wasn't going to go any farther. But what my thought is, you know, you could combine Henry on around to Grace and maybe rename it Henry, and then you could go ahead and take Grace if you wanted to be your collector street on out, because I'll come over to the map too. We're only talking about a very small section. Instead of going like this, here's Henry, and then this is Grace, and you could just go like that, and it would be in its own subdivision, and it wouldn't interfere with our subdivision, and it wouldn't interfere with all of the, or wouldn't create traffic issues with us. And then I also wanted to say I had spoken with several of my neighbors on Gray Street that couldn't come tonight, but they do oppose it to mainly the smaller homes. We aren't opposed to upscale homes going in there, but the smaller lot size we do feel doesn't fit with what our neighborhood is. And then also, the other thing on the street issue is all of the dead-end streets that you're, will be creating. Since it will be a gated community, they won't ever be able to go through, and that creates fire issues, trash trucks, you know, it's difficult to get in. School buses can't get in, and that would be a permanent result that could never be changed. And I think probably at one time, and I don't know, I've never been with the planning and zoning, but the way the dead-end streets all go, I imagine at one time they did intend for a lot of those streets to go through, and now basically you're only having one street go through. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else who would like to speak against this item, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Matt Petrozinski, 952 East Jared. I share a lot of the same concerns that my neighbors do in regards to not necessarily developing that piece of property, but the sheer amount of homes that will be in there due to the smaller lot sizes, the increase of traffic, and I hear the similarities that Mr. Tyson was talking about in regards to how that compares to what we are currently zoned, and if it's that similar, then I propose that we just leave it zoned with the medium density and make sure that that area stays synonymous with the layout that we currently have, the homes that we currently have, the look that we currently have in our neighborhood. So.
Sir, did you sign in?
Oh, I did not.
I'm quite afraid we will not spell your name right now.
You're not going to give it a shot?
I'm not even going to try. Thank you. Anyone else who would like to speak against this item, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes. Seeing no more, anyone who would like to speak for this item or in favor of, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you will have 5 minutes.
Hello, my name is Donald Hancock at 1015 East Republic Road, and I represent the development group for Valley Trail. We are really excited about this project, you know, especially me being from Republic and having the opportunity to do something that I think's unique and hopefully something that the community would benefit from. I want to just kind of give the basic overview. It's a master plan community, so there's been tremendous effort up to this point put in the design elements. You know, we've had civil engineers review this. We've had designers actually bidding home designs on specific lots. And so I think that I can address some of the concerns in regard to lot size. At this point, I don't believe that we have anything that would be smaller than 7,000 feet. And actually, the basis for that in and of itself is that we want to create two products. And what I mean by that, and the whole purpose for the rezoning, is that there wasn't a mixed density zoning that we could apply for, and therefore that's why we went with the plan design development, the PDD zoning, so we could really dial in these two different products. And if I may, I'm just going to run over to the, well, I'm not going to run, but I'm going to walk over here and I'm just going to indicate where those areas are where it's a little bit smaller lot.
Can you turn that?
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that. Do my best here. I'll turn it for everybody out there too. So we basically got 4 phases that we're planning on, and the first phase would be down right in here. Phase 1 has a cul-de-sac, and that would be some of our more modestly sized lots. Phase 2 has none of those, and then Phase 3 has none. Phase 4, it's just this triangular piece right here. So as you can see, the impact as far as anyone having that being backed up to an existing neighborhood, it's going to be along Lynn. Of course, that's interior, And then over here, this whole area is interior to the development. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that, and I'm going to put this back, but then I'm also going to show everyone out here what I just showed council. So again, what I was referring to in the first phase would just be this area right here. In the, of course, second phase, and the third phase, and the fourth phase. In the fourth phase, there'd be another area right here. So that phase, or I'm sorry, that area in the fourth phase, this area in the first phase. So, being that I'm a real estate broker and pretty in tune with what's happening in the market, and again, I don't know everything, so I've reached out to several other real estate brokers and some of the top performers in this market, and really tried to think through, what inventory does not exist in this market right now. As we've had those discussions, our ideas were reaffirmed in that that particular product is designed for essentially folks that want to have lower maintenance commitments in terms of yard work and what have you. So we've condensed down the lot size. The home size in terms of the footprint is still a reasonable footprint. And again, we'd have 2 stories there, and I don't want to get caught up in all these details tonight because I know that I'm limited on time. But we are, as a side note, we're going to host a community meeting with everyone from the Valley Park and the surrounding areas Thursday night at the community center to discuss this in more of a Q&A style. So, as a developer, this being, my hometown, I'm definitely considerate as to, what feedback we can get and hopefully ease any of the concerns that are out there. But again, going back to the product doesn't currently exist in this market of a smaller footprint lot, smaller home that's very nice. And that's what we want to try to create. And just like with the larger lots, these will be very nice homes. We want to create something that's different in its brand than Valley Park or Diamond View Estates, because of course whenever those developments were, whenever they kicked off, we've got kind of a time difference. So styles have changed, tastes have changed. We want to do something that's very relevant to right now. And again, I don't have my drawings, but we've got, it's kind of an Americana type theme to it, and it's very attractive. We think that it'll do very well in this market, and we've had conversation with again other brokers in this market that think that it'll perform very well. We believe that since we've lived through the recession and that the real estate market was definitely hit maybe the hardest during that time, we've learned a lot of things from that, and in terms of how we're going to approach this development. It's a conservative development where, or it's a conservative approach where we've got it phased. I do believe that our intent is to create what we're referring to as a pedestrian neighborhood, where you've got double sidewalks everywhere. Yes, there's gating. The reason for the gating would be that we just want to throttle back the throughput, if you will, of all the vehicular traffic, create a safe spot for kids to run around, and it just seems like that's an appropriate thing to do on this particular track. This 66 acres is uniquely positioned, and we feel like, we're very fortunate to have the opportunity to do a project like this, and we think that we plan to do an excellent job with it, and I think that we want to answer all the community's questions that would come out for it, and I think it'll be something in the end that we can all be proud of. I jotted down some different, as far as the drainage, of course, and Mr. Tyson can probably speak to this a little bit more, but everything will be properly engineered to where we won't be having any sort of water that's running off of our property and to other properties. It has to be engineered that way. There'd be no way around that. If anything, I can't guarantee that we would improve anyone's situation, but the byproduct would be that it would be either the same or it could improve. but we would be bound not to make that any worse, so that would be properly engineered.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but we have reached our time.
Thank you.
Did you say that you were having a meeting? I want to make sure that everybody knows if there is a meeting.
Yes. It would be Thursday evening at the community center, and you'll have to forgive me. Is it 7 o'clock? Yes, 7 o'clock.
Those questions can get answered. I apologize. I have to stick to that
Absolutely, I understand.
order of the meeting. So,
Yep. Thank you for your time.
anyone else who would like to speak for this item, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes.
I'm Brad King. I'm from 842 East Grafton, Nixa, Missouri. So I just want to tell you a little bit about my background. I'm a home builder and have been for 15 years now. I've been a member of the HBA for 10 plus years, and really very involved in some of the events that they have. And I'll speak on a couple of them. One of them is every year I go to the International Builder Show, which is in Orlando or Las Vegas. And it's a great opportunity, especially for young guys, young builders, to really learn what's happening in other markets. And I've really focused on that and paid a lot of close attention. That's really been my main effort in going to the International Builder Show. But I just love looking at different ideas and seeing the products and what are other people doing across the country. And it's always been a passion of mine to come to this area and say, hey, you know, what a great idea. Let's bring that to our area because that's where I live. And, you know, whenever this project was brought to me, that was one of the first things that I thought of. It's like, what a great opportunity to actually bring something different to a community that doesn't have it. And I'll tell you, that's what this one does. You know, if you were to look at developments across the country, I don't want to get too caught up on the mixed density because really they're not as tight as we think. When we're looking at a picture like this, if you were to look at my engineering plans, they're still 60-foot wide lots. And like I say, I've been doing this for 15 years, and I actually live in a development that I've been building in for about 7 years, and it's called the Villages of Wicklow. And it's had huge success there. And I would say if you would ask a lot of people around, whether a broker or builder or you know, even just individuals that know the area, if they ask what's the most successful development in that area, in the Nixa area, I would say that 9 out of 10 of them would probably say the Villages of Wicklow. It's been done really well. And it is exactly like that. It has mixed densities because what we're trying to do as a builder is meet the needs of lots of people. I understand that not everyone wants a low maintenance home, and there are people. I have 4 kids. You know, I like to have a bit of a yard. I like them to roam around in the back and get the heck out of my face sometimes. But there's also so many people out there that want just that smaller footprint. So I'm going to jump ship on you here for a second. Go to the other event that I spent a lot of time in, and that's the Parade of Homes. So through my 15-year career, I've been building high-end custom houses, and we usually put one of them on the Parade of Homes every year, and we allow people to come through. And so I've had probably 8 to 10 years of experience of just listening to people whenever they come through and they talk to me and tell me about the things that they like about this house or that home or you know, this development or why they didn't like this. And one of the things that I'll tell you is very, very consistent. I've just never had an opportunity to do it until now, is that there are so many people out there that want to have a smaller footprint with a high cost per square foot house to where they don't have to maintain it. And I cannot tell you the number of times that I hear that. Hear it over and over and over again. They don't want to maintain a lot of things. They still want to spend a lot of their home because they care about it. It's where they live, but they don't want to maintain it all. And so we've taken just, you know, full merger of all ideas. We've taken the ideas from the International Builder Show, ideas from travel, and looking at all these different developments, and we've decided to place them in Republic, Missouri, which I look at as what a great opportunity for this community to have that product here that people can see and that they've been wanting. I think that we're actually going to see some people really excited about this. So that's my background, and I'm really for it. I think it's going to be a good project.
Could you elaborate on the?
Sir, I'm sorry, we can't. We'll have to do that.
Well, he made a point. I didn't follow it, so.
We'll have this during the public hearing. We have to maintain order. Hopefully, you guys can connect after the meeting. Anyone else who would like to speak for this item, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Good evening. I'm Todd Wojciechowski. I live at 527 East Halsey in Republic. My property also borders this proposed subdivision project, and then additionally, I'm also the community president of Mid-Missouri Bank here in Republic. So I kind of want to discuss a maybe perspective on this project that hasn't been discussed in great detail at the meetings that I've attended. And I just want to tell you guys that I've seen, in the last several years, I've seen a lot of development in Republic. I've seen a lot of growth in Republic, a lot of residential construction in Republic, but the vast majority of that residential construction has been what I would call the first tier type home, or maybe a starter home, for better words. And you know, all it takes is driving around town, and you see a lot of the starter home subdivisions that are being put in. I hear time and time again, we're attracting young families to our community. They're buying these starter homes. They're having children. They're raising their families. They're growing their families, and they're reaching a point that they need to move out of that starter home and into what I would call a second or a third tier home. And we just don't have the inventory to offer them. And so it's unfortunate in that we're getting these great families that are great contributors to this community and are people that we want to retain, but they don't have the opportunities and housing necessarily to stay here. And so I'm seeing time and time again of families that are leaving this area to go to Nixa or Ozark or Willard or Rogersville, the surrounding communities that do have the housing and again, the second or third tier type housing that's attractive to those families. And so I very much like this idea. Again, my house borders that as well, and so I hear the concerns that others have expressed, but I think the other perspective is that this not only offers a unique opportunity that has been addressed by the others, but it also gives us a substantial inventory of that second and third tier type house that will keep these people in our community and allows them to grow and develop in Republic as opposed to leaving and going elsewhere. I think this is probably unique enough, as the previous two gentlemen have mentioned, that not only do we retain those in Republic, but I think it will attract others from other communities to come, because it offers a type housing that maybe we haven't seen here. The other thing too, maybe in a larger sense, and again, I certainly am respectful of the concerns that have been expressed, but on a larger scale, it's my understanding that the current zoning of these two tracts of land would literally allow for a builder to come in and build, call it another starter home subdivision like we've seen in so many other places. And I just think we need to be careful of what, it may not be the perfect plan to everybody, but I think that it's a great alternative. And I think that there's, if this doesn't work for the two gentlemen that just spoke, there could very likely be the next builder that comes in and chooses to make this a starter subdivision. And I would just ask those in the surrounding neighborhoods what they would feel about that, because I don't think there's any limitation to a very small house at a relatively low price point being put in there instead. And so I don't claim to know all the details of these houses, but I think I know enough to know that the price points will be very much in line with what neighborhoods in the surrounding or houses in the surrounding neighborhoods would blend well with those. I think that it falls in line with some of the Valley Park type price points. And so I just think that it's a great option and a good opportunity that needs to be considered. To speak just for a moment about the Hancock family, I think most of you probably know the Hancock family. They're very vested in this community. They've done a number of projects in this community. Mr. Hancock mentioned that he was born and raised in this community, went to school in this community. So it certainly is not a case of an outsider coming in wanting to make a quick buck and leave the area. He truly has a vested interest in this community, and I think wants what's best for the community. If he didn't, he'd probably come in and he wouldn't have to go through all this. He could do that starter home community that I just discussed. And I think he's been very open, very forthcoming about what he's wanting to do, certainly wanting to communicate and answer questions and concerns. And so I think we need to make note of that as well. That I would hope that you guys would make note of that he really has been very upfront and honest about what he's doing and trying to answer questions and make everybody understand the concept. So just another perspective I wanted everybody to be aware of. Thank you.
Sir. Anyone else who would like to speak for this item, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Hi, I'm Heather Reynolds, and I live at 1355 River Road, and I work for the developer. I'm a realtor, and we've done a lot of research, and we really believe this is the right project for the right community. Donald and Brad, I reiterate everything they said, as well as the gentleman that just spoke. I would say hand me back your speech, because he really highlighted the points I wanted to make to you. Brad mentioned about us attending the different builder shows. We also had a booth in Springfield at the HBA show that we do here for the local community, and we talked about 2 properties, 2 developments that are near to our hearts. This is one of them. The other one is called The Trails, and it's in Rogersville. But this brought so much interest, and I'm not from Republic, so I was really honored and proud to talk about Republic and to learn about the aquatic center, the school system, which is fantastic, your community, the Miller, the whole community center. All of your staff and your leaders for this community have been very impressive to me. So I'm honored and proud to say we're working towards a development in Republic. And then I would just ask for your vote affirmatively towards this PDD. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to speak for this item, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Seeing none, I'm going to close the discussion. I do want to remind everybody that this is a first reading, so there is not a vote tonight whether to approve or not approve this. So as we do with our first readings, we don't typically have that much community involvement in our first read. But at this point in time now, we will turn it over. This will be a council-only discussion. Mr. Tyson has presented. We've heard from everyone in the community that wanted to speak, so now I open it up to questions, comments, concerns from council.
This is not the same developer as the prior subdivision, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I think there may be some confusion in that regard. The current owner of the land is Valley Park LC, I believe is the name of that corporation, which is associated with the previous developer. They are their name only appears on the application because they still own the property or portion of the property. Therefore, they had to sign the application. However, they are not the developer in this case. It was just a matter of if you don't have the deed to the property, you can't sign applications on behalf of that property. So that's the only reason their name appears there. So that's a good point.
Any other questions, comments, Ms. Berry?
Grace Street would be a thoroughfare regardless of what kind of density of houses there were in there. So even if it was the starter home subdivision that was put in there, they would still have to flow through Grace. That would be the main thoroughfare. Is that right?
That's correct. Whether it's in this PDD, R1M, R1L, R1H, or commercial, Grace is a planned collector through this site, both on the City of Republic's adopted plan and, as Dave mentioned earlier, also regionally on the Ozarks Transportation Organization major thoroughfare plan. So it would be required to be there.
Any other questions, comments, or concern from council? Mr. Smith?
Grace Street then would have a gate at both ends?
No, Grace Street would be...
It would not?
It would remain a public street.
Okay.
Anything else?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Cameron?
so for clarification, there was a comment that was made regarding the total units or houses per acre. I'm not sure if the agenda is posted, but that was mentioned in planning and zoning, the maximum dwelling unit is 2.7 units per acre. So basically, you cannot have a bunch of 6,000 square foot lots all onto no one can come along and put a bunch of 6,000 square foot lots onto the property as it is. So basically, it has to match the 2.7 units per acre, regardless if Mr. Hancock owns the property or not. That's one point. The other point that I think there's a misunderstanding that, and again, at the planning and zoning, it was very difficult to get this point out. But the way it's currently zoned right now, if you leave the zoning as it is, you could still have a 1,500 square foot home with all siding there tomorrow. So I think that that's a misunderstanding, that this city does not govern whether the surrounding land use has to match the existing subdivision. So this actually provides more protection versus the development on the PDD than the current usage, because someone could buy it today and do that exact development and there is no recourse or no provision before this council or even planning and zoning to change that. So I do believe that what was mentioned, this actually provides more protection on the property versus what it could be. So I think that needs to be just understood. And I believe that'll get brought out potentially Thursday night as well. So I do appreciate the meeting that's going forth, but I just want to clarify that, because I think that's a piece that was missing on Monday night's meeting, is that concern that you have about lot sizes or even the type of home could very well be there tomorrow without even coming before the city at all. So it would still be a 9,000 square foot lot, but the city doesn't get to dictate what's on there. So I just want to be clear about what that is. And so I believe in this density, we're actually putting it down at 2.7 units per acre, which actually protects that versus against that same situation. Because I still believe you could cram 150 lots or 125 lots on that existing development as it is. So just want to be clear what it can and can't be right now without the city's involvement.
If I could just build on that, while I appreciate a lot of the concerns that are expressed in that same vein, a denial of this particular application does not remove or eliminate or reduce any of those concerns or risks they remain, whether it's traffic or an existing stormwater issue or lot sizes or price point of homes. Those risks or concerns would remain, whether it's with this development plan or something different. And so what we have here is a development plan that, in essence, very closely aligns with the city's adopted plans and adopted regulations. So to move away from it under those conditions, I think is not only a zoning consideration, but I think it has economic impacts as well. Because what you hear during the hearing portion of this, what you hear Monday night, is you have a property owner and developer that has analyzed the market and has a product that they believe is in demand. So to deny the market and to deny that demand, in essence, would be to create basically a market phenomenon where there's demand right here in Republic at this site for a particular product, but because of city policy or decision, we deny that demand. And so what you do is you force all of those resources, all of that investment, the labor, the materials, the financial investment, to some sort of substitute housing product that is maybe not even in the Republic market. So just to make that point clear, that this development does meet the regulations in the adopted plans of the city.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns from council? Seeing none, remember this is a first read, so if you have questions, please contact Mr. Tyson before the next meeting. To the citizens who all spoke, thank you all for coming and voicing your concerns, whether they be good or bad. We just appreciate that everyone showed up and made their voices heard. We are closing that issue out for tonight. It will not be voted on tonight for any kind of final approval. I do implore you to, if you have questions, to get with the developer or a staff member if it's on the city side in the meantime, so we can get those questions answered. So I do appreciate everyone coming tonight. So with that, we are going to move on to old business, which is a little out of order because we changed our agenda to make sure we could get the citizens in. So at this point, I would ask for, okay. At this point, I ask for a motion to second for the second reading of bill number 18-16.
Motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Ms. Brenda.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, authorizing the city administrator to enter into an amended intergovernmental agreement with the Nixa Fire Protection District host agency, Logan Rogersville Fire Protection District, Willard Fire Protection District, Battlefield Fire Protection District, Ozark Fire Protection District, Ebenezer Fire Protection District, Stratford Fire Protection District, and the cities of Seymour and Bolivar for the ownership of a respirator mask fit testing system.
Thank you. Need a motion and a second for final passage of bill number 18-16.
Motion. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Chief Compton.
To get everybody up to speed, because we had some absent members last council meeting, this is a fit test machine. There's a photograph of it on the back page there. We use this on an annual basis and as needed throughout the year to make sure that the self-contained breathing apparatus mask fits the employee or staff member correctly. This project started, or this cooperation started in 2015. We always thought there would be 10 of us buy into this program, and we come up with 9, which was not a problem. We went ahead and went through with it because it was saving us every year. We would pay, if we didn't buy into the program, we'd pay about $50 per staff member per year as needed. Our original buy-in was $1,075. There is a little bit of a deduction here for Stratford to buy in at $925. The fire chiefs felt this was a fair and reasonable price because there's a little bit of age on the machine. The machine should last anywhere from 12 to 15 years lifespan. It has to be recalibrated every year. And as you can see there in the exhibit, it's a 2-year process for Stratford to buy into it, which makes their budget a little bit less of a hit on their budget this particular year.
Thanks, sir. Any questions, comments, or concerns for Chief Compton before we move on to a vote? Mr. Jones.
You said you had kind of, you would expect to spend about $50 per person. In this scenario, then what would you expect? What would that be reduced to?
Well, the only thing we're out now is recalibration fees and maintenance is split 10 ways.
Okay.
So we're coming out, we've paid our part back, and we're actually to the good now. So every year you have a shipping, because they want to insure it, it's an expensive machine. Shipping's about $165 round trip, and then the recalibration fee is $595 each year. So you split that 10 ways. So we're coming out ahead by doing this.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Duran?
Aye.
Councilmember Dykeman?
Aye.
Councilmember Brashears?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Self?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Need a motion and a second for the second reading of bill number 18-17.
Motion. Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0, Ms. Brenda.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, authorizing a cost-share agreement with Republic Properties 4 LLC for the extension of public water main.
Thank you. Need a motion and a second for final passage of bill number 18-17.
Motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, Mr. Nelson.
Yes, if you'll recall, we have a known water issue, water pressure issue on the east side of 60 across from, well, basically on all of the east side of 60. We've experienced some water pressure issues. And through our review of the Flat Creek development in the Wildwood Plaza Retail Center, we identified where it would be most logical to cross 60 with a water main. We offered this as a partnership with the developer. They potentially save some money in the type of fire suppression that they have to do because of the low pressure. We see a benefit in the added pressure on the east side of 60. So it works out well for all of us. They've agreed to pay $25,000 toward the cost of the extension. We estimate the total project cost to be $53,000.
Thank you, sir. Any questions, comments, or concerns for Mr. Nelson from council? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilmember Self?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Brashears?
Aye.
Councilmember Dykeman?
Aye.
Councilmember Duran?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Okay, now we're going to skip over to resolutions over past new business since we've already covered that. If you get to them, I'm sorry. Resolution number 18-R-12, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, authorizing payment to Missouri Rural Services Workers' Compensation Insurance Trust for coverage for 2018-2019. Need a motion and a second.
Motion. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Ms. Anik.
Good evening. It's that time of year where we are renewing our workers' compensation insurance. The premiums came in from Missouri Rural, $13,000 less than last year, so that's an 8% decrease. In looking over these documents, it is the experience modification. We were 1.04 for the 17-18 year. This year we're coming in at 0.89. So that's great on our part. That shows our claims experience compared to every other city similar in our size. So we are asking for renewal with Missouri Rural for the 18-19 year. I do have Dan Holt from Missouri Rural here to answer any technical questions that you have about the renewal. So we'll open it up for questions.
Any questions, comments, or concerns from council? Well, my comment will be, sir, I'm sorry you. I didn't realize that we were putting you off until the very end when we did that.
Well, that's okay. I have a daughter who lives in Springfield, and she needed some help today, so that was good. And then Mary Ann Swift is actually a real good friend of my wife's. We used to live in Springfield, so I'm glad to see her again. So,
and quite honestly, either way, if we moved these, you were still at the end. So
I was warned on that, so that's fine.
So our injury experience has driven this number down.
Yes. It's a combination of that, and nationally the numbers are pretty good. There were some codes that went down on a national basis too, so combined it was really good. And there was a little bit of dividend kicked in this year too, so yeah. The dividend, I don't know if you guys know how it works. It's a very complicated process, but each year if there's any surplus, it goes into a dividend fund, and that can sit in there for a long time waiting for the claims to clear. So a little bit cleared from what? I think it was 2005.
It was 2005, 2006.
Yeah, 2005 and 6. So you got a little bit back there, and you still have about 50,000 in that dividend fund. Doesn't mean you'll get it. It means if things go as we hope, then you'll get it. But
kind of a reserve fund.
Yeah, there's a lot of claims that are still hanging out there from, you know, and we settle some. There may be a claim from 2004 that settles out, and then that year's completely done. But until that one settles, we have to keep a little bit back.
Yeah. Mr. Cheers.
How much money was claimed from the 2005 on the dividend fund?
It was $1,229 this year. Yeah.
Any other questions from council?
I think overall, I had a number here. Get to the right page. I think overall we paid back $108,156 in dividends. In an ideal situation, there would never be dividends because we charged exactly perfect. That doesn't work that way.
Experience mod, changing codes, even amount of workers you have in certain codes will change that rate, so all of that's attributed.
The national NCCI sets a lot of the information for us. Some of the codes went up this year, some went down, so each city depends on where your payroll lies, and apparently it was pretty good for you guys on that.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much. On to resolution number 18-R-13, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, authorizing the city administrator to negotiate an agreement with Valley Park Estates LC for the extension of approximately 2,600 linear feet of water services for the development of Valley Trails. Need a motion and a second.
Motion. Second.
Motion and a second. Mr. Cameron, are you covered?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I mentioned during the work session, and basically with this development that's going on, one of the projects that we're working on is installing 2,600 feet. Ideally, the idea was to help drive higher-end homes and try to work with those and get water into those areas. And so as each of these lots sell, this MOU or this agreement would be for the city to be reimbursed or in whole, like we did with Garden Business Park, or we're going to be doing with Trogdon. A very similar approach to help partner with the development to see this through, again, assuming it goes through the second read. This is just a resolution that allows us to proceed with that development of that agreement.
Okay. questions, comments, or concerns from council? I'm assuming if that fails the second read, this is
No go.
null and void. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. On to the there she is, on to the finance report. Ms. Parks.
Good evening. Well, we've been very busy in the finance department. We're currently in the middle of our audit. This year, it is a financial statement audit, and the auditors are from KPM, as you're familiar with. John Cummings is on site with several of his staff, and so far, we've been very busy. But one of the things that he did mention that I'll just point out to council is that next year we're going to have a single audit because we have several grants. One of them is for the Oakwood and Hines project, which will be over the $750,000 threshold. And so in anticipation of that, the finance department has conducted some preliminary training with the different supervisors and individuals working on grants, so that we'll be in good shape for next year's audit. Basically, we have also been working on our new implementation of our financial software. Everyone is very busy with that project, but it's really on target, and we're expected to go live with the financial part of it in July, so that's very exciting. You will see I passed out your financial report. I tried to get out a little bit earlier, but I was tied up with the audit, and so I know that we did not present. I didn't present it in January, but it was pretty basic, you know, just the first month we were on target. I have some exciting news to share, though, about our sales tax. The Department of Revenue was having some issues, as you recall, last year implementing their new software, and so we had a second disbursement in December. January, it looked like things were going to be a little bit lower, but with February and now the March disbursement, we're back on target, and we're actually over what we budgeted. We're at 7.94% for the year-to-date over 2017 sales tax numbers. So that is very good news, and according to the Department of Revenue, we're right on track. They think they have most of their issues resolved, and so we should see our normal disbursements going forward. But I have, of course, included in it the spreadsheet so you can see for yourself the numbers. Over on the cash report, we also have a very strong unrestricted cash balance in our general fund. Of course, most of you realize in January we get our real estate taxes that are transmitted to us from Greene County. They collect them for us, and so we got our big disbursement in. So we have $2,388,705 of unrestricted cash right now in the general fund. Of course, we budget for that, so it'll be used throughout the year. And so overall, our cash position is strong in most of our funds. You'll see that as of February, I had not done the transfer yet of the capital, the designated capital that you approved at the last meeting. That will show up on your March statement. So that designated capital replacement will, for the 20 and the 25 fund, will move up to the unrestricted. Basically, I would just like to go over the numbers. We should be 16.6% for the month of February. And most of the numbers, the general fund revenues are 25% of budget for the year, so we're above that mark. Everything else is right at 15%. Expenses, most of them are below the 16% mark. One thing you will notice on our budget to actuals is that we have now officially split the enterprise fund into Fund 20 for water and Fund 25 for the wastewater. So going forward, we can start seeing where the real numbers lie in those funds and make better decisions. So other than that, if anyone has any specific questions, otherwise I know the meeting is sort of long tonight, so I won't go through each line item.
Any questions, comments, or concerns from council?
No questions. How's the rollout of the software going?
Oh, it is going very well. It's a lot of work. We're right now developing our chart of accounts. It'll be significantly more streamlined. Right now we have a lot of accounts.
But we're working with setting up the check signers. All the basic users have taken we're having to take classes online, and specific users are now starting their individual classes. So starting next week, I have a lot of webinars and conference calls, and they took our whole entire database, and they're currently building the system right now as we speak. Well, maybe not right now, because it's night, but yeah. So.
We're probably the only ones out there.
Yeah. So.
A question, but you said the state had gotten back in line with what so we should be getting more accurate reports. Did some of that have to do, were some of the problems those large swings in the numbers we were seeing from month to month that didn't seem to add up?
Exactly. I went to the Government Finance Officer Association conference, and they had a representative from Department of Revenue there, and basically they said they put in 4,000 man-hours of overtime trying to get all the cities back on track. Basically, they had a new system that was scanning in, but it wasn't reading everything. So they would have to, the ones that would not scan in their sales tax reports, they would have to actually manually enter them. And so that's what was happening, is some months, depending on what kind of forms they were getting in, we get less of our income in that month, and it would come in the next month once they had the people coming from other departments to help with the overtime.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns from council? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
In motion, a second to approve the finance report.
Motion. Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. On to reports from staff, Mr. Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Debbie, I think this is an outstanding report. If you could look at where this report has come from, there's a lot of information here that makes the decisions that we have to make on a daily basis much easier. I also want to commend the Department of Revenue and the legislature, because why they spent so much time is a number of cities are calling saying we depend upon this data to make decisions. And so I know the legislature has heard, and they've listened, and they worked during this session to help get those 4,000 hours and those things resolved. So I appreciate the work that's taken place, because it's difficult to see those swings and make decisions like that as well. Another note that was made about this insurance, some of you may not recall, may recall, we cut $30,000 out of the budget for a broker that would help us watch that. So I appreciate the work that's been done by staff, by Lisa, to get that done, where we're not spending $30,000 for someone to stand up and explain to us the insurance that the gentleman that's selling us the insurance explained tonight. So I think there's a savings to the community, a significant savings for what we had. And I'm not saying, Lisa, your work wasn't worth $30,000. I'm just going to say it wasn't worth for the community to be paying that kind of fund, so glad to see that. Sorry. The admin report is quite lengthy. There's a number of projects in here, but the one is there's a public meeting on the roundabout. It's kind of a, MoDOT is required to do this because of the funding. On March 27th, there's a public meeting from 4:30 to 6 o'clock at Wilson's Creek National Battlefield. Again, we'll post this on our website for the community to get out. They have any questions regarding the roundabout. Again, this will be a January 2019 bid letting, and so hopefully it'll be done in August, hopefully around August of 2019. Andrew's going to take care of it. I want to thank OTC for the ballot initiative. I would just encourage everyone to get out and vote. That's about all I can tell you, is to get out and consider those. There's 2 ballot initiatives, 5% renewal and a new 5 cent. But I would just ask the community to get out. We also have a local election that same day, so just encourage everyone to get out and vote for that. In this same admin report, I'm asking for a it didn't get cut out, so I need to change that. But anyway, we're going to try to schedule an April 22nd work session with the council to discuss the direction planning of the city moving forward, just some different things that the staff discussed on January 18th and 19th at our staff retreat. So I'd ask to see everyone's availability. I will check with everyone just to see if that'll work. But at the same time, I'd like to get everyone just to discuss where we're at, where we're going, what are the next steps, just to stay ahead of the momentum that we have. But I just look forward to having that time to kind of plan and discuss the future as we move forward. And again, there's a lot of discussion regarding the development of the community and people showing up. I do appreciate the public comment and the things that are going through, so we can, accurately communicate those things. And not every development's going to be great for everyone, but I do believe that the direction that we're trying to take the city and the developers that are coming in is a good sign for the city, as well as the sales tax numbers are good signs for us. So I appreciate all the work, and I appreciate the time this council puts in, the mayor, the phone calls, the things that go on to just answer those questions. I know it's not easy, but I appreciate the time and effort, and really that's all I have tonight.
Very quick. I'll be very quick. I do appreciate all the citizens that came out and spoke, because I think that's what city government's all about, whether we agree with them or disagree with them. It's great to have them here, to have their voices heard, and those can be challenging for me because we have to keep order, and sometimes those things can be emotionally charged. But I think everybody did a great job tonight. Appreciative of that, I am gonna just leave it at that and go on to council reports, Mr. Shears.
I too was really impressed with the people that were here tonight and their interest and their comments. But thank you, Mayor, for keeping the meeting, very much, under control, but people could still feel free to say what they wanted to. But I guess rightfully so, we have emotion when we have a nice field in our backyard, and the thought of having homes back there just doesn't fit. But that's something we've got to get over, because that field isn't our field, it's someone else's, and they have a right to develop that. And I think the point was really made well by you tonight, as well as some other people, that if this subdivision doesn't go through, there could be a subdivision, like you said, just in a matter of days, that has 9,000 square feet per lot with a $150,000 house set on it. And regardless of what happens with that, the water drainage is still going to be there. You're still going to have your traffic, so those aren't going to be alleviated either way, depending on what goes into it. So again, good job on your production of the meeting.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jones?
Can I tag with that, with the meeting on Thursday night? I know it's obviously not a city-sanctioned event. Will there be presence of a calming force at that meeting?
Well, yeah, we'll have presence there. I got to shake the head, yes.
Okay, good. I think that's smart.
Yeah.
Just because it is an emotional situation, could be potentially. So.
Yeah.
The other thing regarding the improvements on, or a lot of the things that are happening on Lynn Street, towards to the north, and all the tree trimming and then the utility pole movement and things like that. There have been some citizens that approached me with concerns about equipment left at property that near intersections make it difficult to see past around the intersection.
Yeah, there was sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just pointing that out.
Yeah, well, there was one, I can't think of, yeah, Lynn and, what is that, Hines?
Yes.
They had a truck there, you could not see around that thing. So, I mean, yeah, they moved it the next day, but I'm not all of that is that same way. You got.
Yeah, we try to stay on top of that. If there's a complaint, we try to get a hold of it.
Yeah.
I've got one inspector that goes out and tries to check on them daily, but sometimes they slip.
Any comments, forward them to us so we can call. We had one today on limbs, and contacted Empire, and they're going to be out there tomorrow. So we want to know, and I think it's our response. I think we've been pretty good. If they'll let us know, we can get to the contacts to start moving that. Because sometimes the residents may call, say, an Empire, and they're like, yeah, if they'll call us, we have the direct contacts and those phone numbers. They move pretty quickly. Thank you.
And to tag along to that, it's not the city that's doing anything.
Right.
Sure. I've gotten some calls on that, and I'm just telling it, it's not us.
I've had the same calls.
So, Mr. Wilson?
Well, I don't have a whole lot tonight. It went pretty well, so I'm satisfied.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Self?
That's great news about the sales tax, to see that increase. Part of that is with the development and having more retail in town, that's always going to drive more growth in those numbers. And then for Mr. Hancock to hold that meeting as a developer, I gotta, applaud him for doing that, because I don't know that everybody does that. So to do that Q&A this Thursday shows a good faith, and I'm appreciative of that. So.
All right, Mr. Smith?
Not much different than everybody else. We're just glad to see some citizens out that were for or against either way, voicing their opinion. So.
I'm just very thankful for all the discussion and all of the hard work that staff has put into Valley Trail. I know that that's put a lot on your guys' plate. You guys have all done a great job. I've gotten a ton of compliments for you, Garrett, on that. You've been amazing. So, and then a special shout out to the fire department because there was a grass fire incident Sunday. So thank you guys. I appreciate you.
Behind your house?
I got to play fireman for just like a little bit, and I don't want any part of that ever again.
I went in a basket with her and I confirmed that.
I'm good. I don't ever want to do it again.
All right. Mr. Dykeman.
Well, again, everything's going well. I'm glad, for Debbie and her group and getting this new software kicked off and get started. It's been a long time coming and a lot of work went into getting it picked, and I'm just so thankful it's getting started, and I think it's going to be another new day for the City of Republic.
Right. Thanks. Okay, anything else from council? Mr. Eisen, you have anything? Mr. Cameron, anything else? You want me to close this out? All right, with that, I will be asking for a motion and a second for executive session. No further action other than the announcing adjournment by the mayor shall take place after an executive session that is scheduled as the last matter on the agenda unless otherwise stated on the agenda or is allowed for RSMO 610.02. We will be covering RSMO 610.021.1 pending and or potential litigation, closed session, closed vote, closed record, and RSMO 610.021.3 hiring, firing, promotion, or disciplining personnel, closed session, closed vote, closed record. Do I have a motion and a second?
Motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Councilmember Self?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Brashears?
Aye.
Councilmember Dykeman?
Aye.
Councilmember Duran?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Carry 7-0. Regular meeting will be adjourned. After a 5-minute recess, we will conduct our executive session.
Yeah, we can stand.
Yes.
I have my little shovel out there.
Was it your fire or somebody else's?